Welcome to the F50Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
Hey, F50 Women. Thank you so much for tuning in again. And if you've been here before, you know what we're about. If you haven't been here before, then I'll just tell you, we are here to be inspired by Satori Shakoor. She's an artist, musician. Her artistry and leadership and commitment to storytelling have transformed communities, connected humanity, and inspire a global audience with the power of narrative. And just the idea of power of narrative, we all have one, we all participate in one, but I think unconsciously. We'll get to that some more. You'll get to tell us about that, who you are and what you do. But first, I just want to start off and try to understand and hear about who you were as a younger woman. Tell us about, and it could be as a little girl, whatever significant. Just tell us about who Satori was as a little girl or a younger girl, teen, high school, wherever you wanna start us off.
Well, I was a very curious little girl. I grew up in a religious cult. Nothing out there like Jim Jones and Kool-Aid suicides. But my uncle was the minister of a big church here in Detroit. And he had his own congregation, his own way of understanding things. So he kind of had control over the people in his congregation. And so he could have been a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not sure. I just could, because I didn't sit in the congregation and listen to his teachings. And if I did sit there, I didn't understand anything that was going on.
Okay.
So I grew up in a very patriarchal environment, and which I very much resented my uncle, because at that age, I didn't understand why I couldn't do the same things my brothers could do.
Right.
My mind, my imagination went beyond the boundaries of being pink, a girl. Okay.
Right.
So I was very curious as to why I was relegated to that kind of a role, and I often rebelled. But I was curious. I loved school. I loved, in school they had the little letters on the blackboard and the pictures. So I'd come home and do my bedroom like that. I like to copy creative kinds of things. I loved reading, learning to read and to write. And when I could read enough, I got a library card. And at that time, you could check out 5 books at a time. And I remember going with my younger girlfriend. She was in a grade lower than mine. But since I was the oldest in my household, she was younger. She had the benefit of her older sister's knowledge. So we go to the library. I check out my 5 books. She checks out her 5 books. And she looks at mine. She says, "Oh, you were still reading books with pictures in them?" And from that day on, I made sure that anything I read had no pictures. And
Right.
Because, anything that made you seem younger or a little girl, you rejected it. So everything that I was introduced to in school sparked my imagination. I loved reading about Egypt and Greece. I would be an archaeologist one day. And I went out to the backyard and started to dig a hole. I was going to dig down to China. Or maybe I would find some fossils or
Wow.
esophagus or something. I love hanging out in museums and beholding artifacts that were made or left by people that lived thousands of years ago. It would just fascinate me that I could stand before something somebody touched and held and crafted thousands of years before I came into existence. I loved music. I'm from Detroit. So I was very inspired by Motown. And then, of course, living in Detroit, right across the Detroit River is Windsor, Ontario, Canada, which didn't seem like another country at the time to me. It just seemed like another, Detroit. So I felt, and then there was a radio station called CKLW, which still exists. And they used to play the Turtles, and they used to play music, European music, or, bands that they weren't Black. And so I had this benefit of WJZZ, Black R&B, Motown, plus across the Detroit River music. And when I was in the third grade, a woman came to our classroom and she whispered to the teacher, and the teacher said, "Class, everyone who's right-handed, raise their hand." So I raised my hand, and I was so happy that I wasn't left-handed or different and she picked out 5 students, which I was one of them. And we marched down the annex into the new part of the building, and they opened the door, and there were all of these stringed instruments. And I was invited to play the violin, which I became very excited about because I never thought I'd even hold a violin, let alone play one. And I excelled in it. I became a professional violinist. By the time I was 15, I was playing on records coming out of Detroit at this recording studio, which is now it has a historical marker called United Sound Studio. And we did the string parts that one of my classmates would arrange when I went to high school. I was playing in 4 orchestras and even a jazz group called the Electrifying String. I had a red Barkus Berry electric violin.
Wow.
I guess I grew up in the sweet spot of history where education had great value, and a public school education probably could stand up to any private school education. Matter of fact, when I went to college, I majored in music in high school. And when I got to college, my senior year theory books were the same books I was my freshman year in college. So
Wow.
I just sat back like this,
Done
well through first year.
that. Yeah.
And I've transposed some music because I was hoarse and couldn't sing the aria. And they said, they were shocked. Where did you learn how to transpose? And I said, high school. And they were like amazed. And for me, it was like nothing, because what you learn is what you learn. And what people are surprised about that is a surprise to you that they think it's a surprise.
Right.
So I was very much enamored of learning in school, and I still am. I like to be involved in developing in ways of education and self-development. I didn't know that I was an artist. I mean, you don't know what you are until I didn't know I could sing. I didn't know anything. You're a mystery to yourself. So I was basically a laboratory and the lab rat in my laboratory. And I wanted to know myself, not knowing that I wanted to know myself, but there were things that I just didn't know that I was very excited about discovering. And then my mother grew up in Jim Crow South in Mississippi. So she was always teaching me about how to live in Jim Crow America. However, I was living into civil rights, women's rights.
Future.
I was living into the future. So her
Right.
advice, her way of rearing me always seemed scary. Don't do that. Don't move to New York and explore Broadway or your dreams. And so I realized I love my mother.
Yeah.
I have to get out of here
Okay.
and really understand who I am, without her fears suffocating me.
Right.
She was always afraid of me being out there in the world, and I was always excited to be out in the world. And I never wanted to disappoint her, but I realized just being me might disappoint her. But then when she saw my commitment to what I was up to, and by the time I moved to Los Angeles, I was inviting her to come see me in plays, and she was sitting next to Connie Stevens, whose daughter was in the same play as me, and them talking about how proud they were. And then it was the opening night party, and my mother was a domestic. And so we went to the opening night party where they had strolling hors d'oeuvres, and she was uncomfortable in that environment because she was the one serving.
Yes.
So she
Different
said,
side. Yeah.
I want to go back to your apartment. So I put her in a cab and she went back to her apartment. So that it was just different. We were just on opposite ends. She was 50, I was 14.
Yeah.
She was perimenopausal when I was going into puberty. So we were like,
Yeah, you were on completely
and
different sides of the coin. Yeah.
conflict, conflict, conflict. It wasn't until I was 42
Mhm.
years old that I realized, oh, I want a fuller relationship with my mother.
Okay.
And the way that I would see having that fuller relationship is to be
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Not that she would stop being my mother, but I
Right.
don't need a mothering mother. I had a child by then. I was living in a whole other state. And I thought I would be more fully self-expressed as a friend. She's a woman, I'm a woman, let's be friends. And I worked hard to develop that relationship. And I remember one day we were sitting at her kitchen table and I said, girl, I am just so tired of these men. And she go, I know what you mean. And I'm like, oh, we've come. So
Yeah, we're surprised by her reaction. Yeah.
yeah, that she wasn't trying to do a status thing, or there were certain things we could talk about and certain things we can't. I
Right.
can't use this kind of language because it was disrespectful. That somehow and there was more things she could tell me
Okay.
about her life as a woman
Yeah.
rather than keep it all to perfection. Or I can't tell you anything about me that's human,
Right. And
because
so
then
what,
you might not like me as much.
what sparked that desire to be your mom, to be your friend? Like, did something happen, or did you just growing older with your own daughter, you realized that there are things you wanted to ask her that you couldn't? Yeah, what brought that about?
Well, I actually had a son. I think because I lived in Hawaii on my own. I
Yeah.
lived in Los Angeles, New York, and then I was living in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of self-development seminars. And I just felt the confinement of our relationship as mother-daughter, because there was a lot of status in there. There
Okay.
were a lot of things that she was uncomfortable with me saying or being. And they were things that I developed myself to say and be. And so I reflected on my relationships with other women as friends. We had great times. We laughed, we shared. There
Mhm.
was a depth to it. And I realized I wanted a deeper relationship with my mother. So it was a very conscious and intentional move on my part. I first articulated, I want to be friends, Ma. But how do you become a friend to your mother after training to be her daughter for 42 years?
Yes.
It just kind of developed. We started to talk every day on the phone, and we started to share about different things. And I became curious about her. She started to respect my artistic life. I think she gained respect when I was making money doing what I was doing,
Yes.
because that was the crux of her concern. You're going to starve
Yeah.
to death, or you're a starving artist. So when I started to make money and create a career, then
Mhm.
she could relax and say, I don't have to worry about her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
But there
did
was actually a couple of years where I weaned myself from my mother. I told her, do not call me. I will call you. I refused to call her mama. I called her Annie for
okay.
for 2 years. And then one day I called her mama, and that was it, that
Okay.
I could embrace her and not feel codependent with her,
Okay.
because I was codependent with her.
Yeah, because she sounds like she was a strong mom, having survived what she survived. She
Mhm.
was almost like those wings around her baby girl kind of thing happening. That's really encouraging that you consciously decided to develop a different relationship with your mother. I know a lot of daughters and mothers, because we want so much for them, sometimes we might hold them down because of our fears or what happened
Mhm.
to us. And it's
Mhm.
really nice to hear that you came back and made a decision consciously. This is what I'm going to work on doing.
Mhm.
Do you feel like at any point in time, you becoming friends, did you overshare? Was there any point in time where you felt like, well, now she's going to start kicking back into mom because look what I just shared with her?
I never feel like I overshare.
Okay.
No, because there's nothing that I have done or thought or said that I think that I believe no one else has done or thought or said.
Right.
You live a certain amount of years and you realize, and you're a curious person, and you want to push the boundaries of what society or somebody else tells you is the truth, then there is no oversharing. And if she feels uncomfortable, or anyone feels uncomfortable with whatever it is I'm being or saying, they can always say so.
Yeah.
You get the freedom to be who you are in my space, and I will attempt to have the same freedom, and we can always talk the thing out. No,
Yeah.
I've never, but I thought she overshared one time. I was not ready for one of her answers when I challenged her. I thought I was being off. And
Yeah.
I was like, what? And even now, when I tell my sister, she doesn't believe me because my sister was very comfortable being like she called me. I was a mama's girl. And
Okay.
she was always a mom. She's my mother's passed now, but Doreen was always a mama's girl. She still describes herself that way. And that was her relationship with my mother. And she was very content to have it. And my
Yeah.
mother was content to have that. I just wasn't.
Right. Yeah. That's another important thing to tell for children, multiple children in a family, that your relationship with your parents may be different, but whatever is comfortable for you and your parent.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how it sounds like, and I don't know if you've always been this way, and you can tell us. It sounds like you are comfortable in your own skin. I don't know if that's something you grew into.
Grew into.
Okay.
I was socialized like every other female.
Okay.
Be quiet, demure, cross your ankles,
Hmm.
be a virgin forever,
Hmm.
or at least with every new man.
Right. Yes.
So you have a baby, you can't lie anymore. And
Right. Right. And then we
I,
all know.
perform for the male lens. That's what gives you value. And then, of course, when I turned 50 and was entering into perimenopause myself, I began to notice that I didn't recognize myself. Actually saying what was on my mind, and I would go, you just said exactly what you thought, you bad girl. Now
Yeah.
you're going to have to apologize.
Yeah.
And then it became to a point where I would wake up in the morning and tell myself, you're going to have to apologize to at least 3 people today. Because I didn't understand the mood swings, the hot flashes, the anxiety, all of the changes that were going on with me. And I didn't understand that these were necessary hormonal changes that were natural, and that they were pushing me to become who I really am,
Mm.
and that I didn't have to be the nice little performer.
Yeah.
If I kept performing for the male lens, they were eventually that lens would eventually tell me my breasts aren't perky, I'm not
Yes.
juicy, I can't have children anymore. I really don't have values. So go sit in the rocking chair, put your glasses on your nose, and read your grandchildren some nursery rhymes.
Yes.
And after all of those years, you gain this wisdom, you coming into power, you're establishing this is who I am. And you look around and you see other women your age. You look at a Kamala Harris, you look at a Michelle Obama, you look at all of these governors and CEOs, and you realize, wait a minute, how do I not have value? How is it that at 22, when I didn't know anything,
Mhm.
oh, how is that? And that's valuable too. How do I get reduced as I add to myself? So
Right.
those questions all came into focus for me. And I started to try to answer those questions with my living in my life.
Okay. Tell us about some of those answers that you found. That's so important because I know for myself, you struggle with that value because for so long, it's you look good, you smell good, your hair is full, and men are paying attention to you. And then all of a sudden you get older and you're sort of like, wow, I can't really make that happen anymore. It's just not me. And so tell us how.
I can tell you what I discovered. I can't tell
Yes,
you
please.
like a how to,
Right.
but I remember understanding, there was these self-help books, and I
Mhm.
was interested in my mid 40s. I was interested in getting married again. And I was interested in at least having a relationship. So
Mhm.
there were all these books, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Catch 'em and Keep 'em, The 10 Rules, whatever it was. And all of the books ended up, you have to do all these little performative things. And then at the end of the book, it says you're going to have to continue to do all those things. And I'm like, that's too much work. I jumped up and down I put men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I threw it on the floor and just jumped up and down on the book. Like, no, I was dating this man and I realized that there were things that I needed.
Yeah.
But as a Black woman, and I don't know whether this is true for white women or not, but as a Black woman, I felt afraid to tell my partner what it was that I needed, because I was afraid that if I said what I needed, that he would leave, that it would be too overwhelming for him, that my function was to take care of his needs. And I was having a long distance relationship with a man I knew in high school that lived in Los Angeles. I woke up and I called him one time and I said, I need to have a conversation with you. He said, okay. And I had written down at least 30 things that I needed. I mean, they were like ridiculous things. I started reading the list. I said, I need that whenever I call you, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're in the middle of a session, pick up the phone and speak to me. Mm-hmm. I need you to drop they were just really, they were like cater to me needs. Yeah. I can't even remember the whole list, but they were things that I've always wanted to say, whether I needed them or not. I was just exploring. And when I finished reading the list, he says, well, I'm glad that you could share that with me. And I felt a certain kind of freedom. And then there was another friend of mine. He was a great friend of mine. He would pick me up from the airport. Even if I hadn't talked to him for months or a couple of years, I'd call him and say, I'm at the airport. He would come pick me up. And then one day he picked me up and I knew that I had a need, an emotional need that I needed to handle. So I didn't want him to leave after he dropped me off. So he stayed for about an hour. And then he said, I've got to go. And when he left, I realized I was a bottomless pit of needs, that I would never recognize what he had given me or what any man or anybody would give me because I was so bottomless. And I remember calling him up and saying that same thing. I apologize. You picked me up from the airport. You stayed. You had a conversation with me. I had some emotional needs I needed met. And I still wanted more from you. And so I apologize because I didn't recognize what you had given me, and that there was nothing else required. And he says, you know what, Satori? He said, that's why I love you, because you are so honest. And I realized that I didn't feel ashamed saying that to him, admitting that vulnerability, saying that to him. And that gave me a lot of courage to continue to tell the truth about myself and practice being open and vulnerable and human. Nice. So when I was talking earlier about waking up and saying, I've got to apologize to at least 3 people today, it was because I was unpracticed expressing myself truthfully and honestly. So I would either be pushed through anger to say it, frustration to say it, and then it would come out like blame or you're wrong, rather than just owning this is me expressing what I need to express to you. And it doesn't really, there's nothing you need to do, but there's something I need to say. And now I feel I trust myself to have a conversation with anyone about anything. And I realized that socially and even in work environments, that I had this chip as a Black woman. I think everybody has a chip. I believe that chip is there since birth, depending on your race, your gender, your religion, and it manages you. You don't have to think about what to say, not say, because you're a little soldier in the army of the system of white superiority. So if I'm at my workplace and there are little microaggressions thrown at me or little unfair remarks, I don't say anything, because to say anything, I might lose my job. So the chip is managing me, and I don't know what will happen if I say what I need to say.
Right.
So that's when I notice the chip is trying to manage me. If they do fire me for saying what there is to say, okay, then there's the possibility in the firing. Oh, I get to go and choose an environment that is inclusive or I don't have to be afraid of who I am in this world. If I do, in fact, say what there is to say, do what there is to do, and have respect, then life becomes it becomes more tolerable. It
Yes.
becomes more fun. You know how Richard Pryor talked about being a Black man in Africa? I've become a Black woman anywhere I am in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? That I don't have to. And then there are people who are offended, you know. I have a lot of white girlfriends who in the beginning didn't want to talk to me about white privilege because they didn't understand what it was.
Right.
Well, I was poor. My mother and we lived in a shack and she didn't have my father. No, that's not what it's not your environment when you're growing up. It's the opportunities that you get to have
Yeah, it's not you.
along the way. It's not, yeah, yeah.
Wow. So there are two questions that come to mind. When you
Mhm.
said everybody has a chip, I was thinking about it differently. But this chip that you're talking about is almost a trained chip from your background, right?
Like a computer program. It's
Okay,
it's been embedded in my brain
got it.
since birth.
Right.
And it tells me how, everybody has it. So your mother teaches you
Yeah.
how to be a girl. It's a socialization, politicization, if
Yeah.
that's a word. It
Yes.
tells you how you should operate, being who you are, what gender you are, what color you are, what class you are, what
Yeah.
religion you are. It tells you how to be so that you don't rock the boat or everything can operate just as it's supposed to. And when it gets out of control, when you and others challenge the chip, then we get to have rights or we get shut down or what's happening now in our world and in our country.
Yeah.
It's like I just notice how fearful the leaders of the country are because they want to. How is it that you're so afraid of whatever it is you're afraid of that you literally want to take food out of little kids' mouths? You want to deny them the opportunity to learn, which I had and which was so enjoyable. That you don't want older people to be able to have Social Security and to have a quality of life. What is it that you're afraid of? You're so rich, you're so powerful, yet you want to take the little someone else has. How scared must that person be? And I don't feel sorry. That doesn't lead me to feel sorry. It just leads me to wonder
Right.
what what's what's so scary, what's so painful in your life that you would want to bully everyone.
That's a big question, big discussion for
Mm,
sure. But there's some programming that went on there as well.
That's why I don't blame anybody because everybody has a chip. I have
Everybody has a chip.
everybody has a chip. And so therefore the problem is we don't know we have the chip
Yes, because we're just
running on the program. And so at the end of the day, it's of value to know that you have the chip so you can be
yes,
aware of it, so you can have a world that works for everyone because it's killing us, this chip,
yes,
literally.
yes.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like, would you describe menopause as almost a glitch in the chip? I can't remember when you either take the blue pill or the red pill, and so all of that
The
false
matrix.
reality, yeah, the matrix. Would you say it as a glitch in a chip, and are you thankful for it? Is it like, was it a blessing in disguise?
Totally a blessing. The reason I made my film, Confessions of a Menopausal Femme Fatale, and the reason that I'm in this movement, was it last week or a couple weeks ago, I went to our governor, Whitmer. Halle Berry she's kind of like the face of menopause now. And she really wants to get this conversation started. So I went up there and it was very small gathering of women, about 60 women. So it was the governor, Halle Berry, and I'm going to be speaking this week, coming week, at the Michigan Women's Commission about menopause, which I did a couple of years ago. Because if we know that we're in menopause, we can be responsible. We can tell
Yes.
our husbands, our kids, because the kids, like my mother was like, be turned into this Dracula. And I was like, what happened? Why
What is happening?
are you, woo?
Yes.
And Halle Berry is misdiagnosed with herpes, and that kind of threw her relationship
Really?
off with her boyfriend for 3 days till they all were tested and realized, oh no, it's not herpes. Oh, okay. And then she
Jeez.
was misdiagnosed, spent $16,000 because her eyes were dry. There are all these different symptoms, and they show up in
Yeah.
every individual woman. And there are very few medical studies, or the medical studies didn't even start till 1993 or 97. We're unstudied
Yeah.
because I don't think women live this long. Maybe this is the longest women have ever, they never had to even deal with menopause. So, and then we have all of these environmental impurities, and we have fibroids, and we have other things, hysterectomies. And so we have these medical issues to address. But menopause affects more than just physically. It's
Yeah.
it's a total rewiring of your brain. And
Mm.
yes, I do feel it's a blessing. And I do wish that beginning your menses, biological clock, postpartum depression, and menopause were all rites of passage that we
Yeah.
could celebrate as women, talk about it together as women, and realize, oh, I've reached this stage of life. And at this stage, I get to walk into freedom if I allow myself. But a lot of times women see menopause, oh, I'm aging myself. Oh, I'm 50, I'm 55, I'm 60, until you become of an age where you don't care anymore that anybody knows what you're. But you
Right.
want to be young, and you can get plastic surgery and Botox and breast lifts. And I
Yeah. And
mean,
you're not really honestly, you're not fooling anyone.
you're not. And even young women, 20, 30s, talking about, yeah, I'm gonna, get my, you know, get something done to my eyes when I'm 30. And I'm like, what? It's cultural now. It's been absorbed into the culture where this is, or any kind of, I'm gonna get a BBL, my butt big,
Why? Yeah.
because that's what they think men like. And
Yeah.
I heard Country Wayne say last night on his Netflix special, three of his baby mamas had work done, and he says, "I'm gonna tell you, women, you can get that done, but we don't care. We do not
That
care.
too.
Really?
Yes. I think men need to talk about it more and then we'll accept it. But I hear that all the time too. I don't care. It's not really that important to me.
No, no. Long
Yeah.
as there's some there.
Yes. Yes. Do you think that we can catch this earlier, catch this wait? Do we have to wait for menopause before we fall into this like monsters? You don't even know what's happening to you, and then be able to own ourselves and speak up. And I know I mean, I've been dealing with it for a little while, and I feel like I'm just now trying to learn how to not outburst, but just be able to be calm in myself and know that I have something I have to say and just
Mhm.
say it without expectation or, without all that or anxiety. Do you think we can learn that earlier? And tell me about how we can even make that transition smoother, or as I heard you say it, as a rites of passage. I think that's amazing to just get women to understand this is your life journey, and it is a blessing to go through each point that you're going to talk about that early. But
Yeah.
we just didn't talk about menopause, and I was just like, monster, and I'm still trying to collect her, grab her back in. So yeah,
And I
tell
think you just hit the nail on the head. We
me.
need to talk about it. So I did go to older women to ask them. And my mother, I started with my mother, and I don't remember.
Hmm.
Or some women saying, I'm too young, and they would be 70. Or I refuse to go through menopause
Of
because
course, not doing that.
it
Yeah.
aged them, or they didn't want to acknowledge I'm getting older, or whatever the fears are about getting older. But I think if you own it and you address it, then you can reach back, like my daughter-in-law. She, when I started writing about menopause and writing this film, she said, "Can I go to lunch with you?
Mm.
And can you tell me about this? Because I'm dating a woman who's like 10 years older than me, and she's going through it. And I just want to understand her better and
Oh,
understand myself as I come into it, right?
right.
So I think that we all become curious about who we're growing because we can always feel those transitions. We sense them in different stages of our life. And it's like, oh, there's some kind of like I could like I've always been a gym rat. So at 45, I was wearing crop tops, showing my belly button, and then I
Yes.
heard this voice say, "You know, you are just too old to be showing your belly button." I'm like, who said that?
Who's that? Oh my goodness. And so did you listen? Did you listen to the voice and were you like,
Yes,
okay,
I
yeah.
did. Yes, I
Okay.
do not dress the same way.
So you feel like that was a voice of wisdom and not a voice trying to try to break you down and say you're just too old. You can't do that anymore.
Well, at the time, I just didn't notice. You know, you just don't notice. It's like your birthday.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is my birthday. Do I wake up and it's like,
Yeah, you're
new
different.
age?
Yeah.
You're with the same person you were yesterday. It takes a couple of years for you to go, oh, I'm into this decade. And it just didn't seem, I didn't know why I was wearing crop tops. I just kept wearing them. You know, it's like wearing bobby socks. So,
Right.
oh, maybe why am I still wearing my,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like that old, sometimes you see people with old hairdos that look like the 1970s.
yeah, yes.
Why are you still doing that?
A book to ask the question and you start to, yeah, well, why am I continuing to be something from the past?
Right.
Who would I be now? You
Yeah.
know, so I think, yes, I do think the more we know about ourselves, the
Mhm.
more we can give to generations coming up behind us.
It is so true. So tell us about this film. I'm anxious and excited to hear about it for lots of reasons. But one, I had a woman on my podcast probably a couple of years ago and talking about menopause. And even when she was talking about it, I was like, should we be talking about this out loud? Because it's like a secret. We're not supposed to tell anyone. So I'm
Right.
excited about this film. It'll be just another level of empowerment for women to know this is not some dirty secret. And you don't have to go hide in the corner or go to the hospital, the crazy hospital now that you're
Yeah.
going through this transition. So I've talked enough. Tell us about this film.
Well, when I was 45, like I said, I started to notice these symptoms and I started to ask around and I couldn't get anybody to talk to me about it. So I
See?
basically had to go through it in the dark. And I wanted to write about it, but I hadn't gotten through it.
Okay.
In 2019, I started to write about it and
Okay.
I started to think about the spiritual, emotional, and growth self-development aspect of it. What I noticed that I was doing, I was reflecting on my past
Okay.
and I was owning my past,
Okay.
forgiving myself for the past.
Yeah.
I would run into boyfriends and I would apologize
Hmm.
because before it was like, it's you. You were this to me, you were that. And I never acknowledged that I had there was something I contributed to to that to that relationship ending or going an opposite way. I remember in Toronto, then I became very intentional about it. I would call up people and say, I'm so sorry. This is what I contributed to the breakup of the relationship. And some of those men thought I was calling them back to sleep with them.
Right. You're trying to get back with me.
Or I was in Toronto and the streetcar was going and I saw Virgil
Mhm.
and I was getting on the streetcar and he said, Satori. And I said, hi, Virgil, how are you doing? And he goes, you remember me? And I said, yeah. And that was all it was.
Yeah.
That was a completion. So we leave all these dead bodies, right, in the wake of us moving forward in our lives. And we don't think of them as dead bodies. We just write them off.
Yeah.
And I started to do it with men and women. I apologize. Remember when, and most of the people appreciated it.
Yeah.
And some of the people still had harboring resentment or whatever. And I had to just let that be that.
You have to let it work itself out in them. Yeah.
So I became very responsible for who I was becoming, and that I wanted to enter into this new stage of life or any new relationships clean, very much aware of what I was bringing into the relationship and what I was leaving out of the relationship. So that became a practice in owning my past, forgiving myself, and then giving the other person the opportunity for me to forgive them and giving them the opportunity to forgive me if they wanted to.
Right.
But in the forgiving of myself, that was the most important thing, because we're often the last to forgive ourselves.
Yes.
Forgave myself for things small and things big. I had postpartum depression, but I didn't know I had it. So I just thought that I was a cold mother. Why am I not bonding with my child? I don't like being a mother. And then my son was involved in a car accident. He had a brain injury, and then 5 years later died. So that's all in my movie. And it explores the idea that we as mothers have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, the only perfect mother is Grace.
Yes.
There's no other perfect mother.
No, there is not.
You know, the placenta doesn't come out with instructions how to be.
No. No, they do not.
No,
No.
no, no. And
Every
that we
child is
all need,
different. Yes. So,
and if we need a break from our kids, that doesn't mean we're bad mothers.
right.
It's just a reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, once I had forgiven myself and gone through Wall Street crashing and not being able to support myself as an actor as I had for 12 years, realizing I do not want to go back to a cubicle in an office with new software that I'd never heard of. I
Yes.
left, it was Word and Excel.
Right.
Like Excel 33, what?
Yes.
I don't even want to learn this.
Yes.
So I then began to take a stand for my life and say, I am going to do what I love to do for the rest of my life, no matter
Okay.
whatever that entails. If I have to downsize, whatever I have to do.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I discovered they were almost like miracles. I booked a job as an actor. They decided not to do the play, but they paid me anyway. Or I could use my acting skills to work with this trainer for an eye bank in Michigan, where you become the nurse, you become the donor, and you sort of play these different roles in getting the cornea taken.
Yeah.
Because you have to get so it's high stakes communication is what it was.
Right.
So I learned high stakes communication because you have to get that cornea within 24 hours or it's no good. So how do you engage with someone that you've never talked to before and get them to give that loved one the donation? Sometimes you may have to talk to a funeral director.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning, how do you get him out of bed and open the door so that the recovery people can, so it became something that I not only was I able to lend my craft, my skills, but I was able to learn high stakes communication. I could use that in my own life. And I remember working with when I created the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers, there was a storyteller I really, really wanted. He was a politician, retired, and he was like, "No, I don't want to do it." You know, he had just been released from prison. He had an ankle bracelet. I don't want to do this. And I almost let him off the hook. But then I said, "You've been trained in high stakes communication." So I also knew he loved publicity. He loved being in the newspapers. So I never told him, "Okay, you're off the hook." I just said, "Oh, I just wanted to call and say that you're in the Detroit Free Press." "Oh, I am." He came and did it. Was one of the biggest advocates for the show.
Yeah.
So you have to remind yourself what I've learned, and that I didn't just have to learn it, that I could actually apply it,
Use it. Yes.
use it in my life and see the
Yes.
results of having learned that. So there was a lot of different miracles that happened. And then I had the idea for the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers.
Okay.
6 years after my mother and my son passed away. Detroit was dead too. Emergency management, water shut off, Flint water crisis, people moving out, graffiti, dilapidated houses. But I could see Detroit coming back. And
Okay.
that's how I felt. Like I was coming back to life. I wanted to live.
Yeah.
And I had been touring the country with a group called The Moth out of New York. They do storytelling. I noticed when I told my story of grief and loss that I was healing. People from all over the world were emailing and saying, "Thank you for telling your story." I began to see, oh, I'm a storyteller. I come from a long line of storytellers, old Black women from the Jim Crow South. That's how they communicated. It's like breathing. So
It's just something that's been happening. So you just figure a big deal. Yeah.
could this be a service?
Yeah.
And I love it. It's natural. That's when I started to have this delicious idea of creating a platform where people from the city of Detroit could tell their stories. And at the time, I had no money. Wall Street had crashed. I was living in the basement of a friend's house. Once you have an idea and it takes root and it's delicious,
Right.
you find a way. So I sold tickets in advance, 45 seats sold out, and standing ovation. And that gave me the juice,
Propelled you forward.
inspiration to 13 years later. We just did a show last night, sold out.
Wow.
It's streaming online now. You're welcome to go watch it. Women Warriors.
That's what the title is. That's how we would find it.
I can put my website in the chat. You just go to live and hit the live stream link and you can watch it. But we
And then
have
can watch it.
women from Iraq, women from Rwanda, 2 from Detroit telling their women warrior stories.
One of the things that inspired me to do this is throughout my young life, the books that affected me most and that I loved most and just read from beginning to end were stories about women overcoming. There was one woman from Rwanda as well, and her whole story, I was so inspired that at the end she could actually forgive and love after all that she had been through. Women's stories are like gems and jewels, and I just want younger women to listen to the stories, hear the lessons, and learn from them, use them as tools. And so I'm excited to take a look at the website. I love when women tell their stories. And I want us as women to talk more with each other about life, about the reality of what you're about to go through or what you've been through, how to talk up. And we just need to commune with each other more. I feel, and this is just my opinion,
I
I
agree.
feel like when we change and when we collect with each other, this world will change. I really, really do. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm excited to see this film and to go to that link, twistedtellers.org. I'm so excited to listen to it. So tell us what's next for you. I know you've got the storytelling, you've got the film. What is next for you?
Once the film is released, what I would like to do is speak. I already do speak, but I like to speak about storytelling, about menopause. But basically, I want everyone to learn how to tell their own stories
I was going to ask that question.
because we can see how powerful narrative is. DEI used to be this, now it's this, just because there's a story around it that supersedes and everybody believes, you know? So I think when other people tell our stories, we become like an extra. If we don't tell our stories, then we become people who look and smell good, but we don't know you. I do believe that telling your own story is an act of resistance, it's an act of revolution, and it's an act of self-love.
Wow.
But mostly it's a contribution to your community and to the world. And often we don't tell our stories because we don't realize that we're ashamed to tell this or that.
Yes.
And so we leave out the courage it took to overcome this or that.
Yes.
We don't want to we don't want to say we did this, but you leaving out what you overcame
Yes.
and who you are now. Or we don't want to tell our daughters that we were hot mamas.
Yeah, who we really were. Yeah.
Right. And so that they can feel open enough to come to us and talk about different things that we wouldn't ordinarily become friends with after you become grown women and you don't need that mothering like you did before, and you don't need to give advice. Plus, storytelling, if you tell your own story, there's no wrong or right. You're not scolding,
Right.
making somebody else wrong,
Right.
sharing your experience, and they find themselves in you.
Yeah. Very true.
That's the best, when they can come up to, oh, I related so much to what you were saying.
Yes.
And it shifts something in them
It
just
does.
because you told your truth,
Yes. You told the truth. Yes.
Yeah.
Unashamed. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you teach or can we learn how to be storytellers and tell a narrative?
Yes. Oh,
Is
yes. I've been doing storytelling workshops for
okay.
years because I have to, because the people that take the stage don't know.
Okay.
Everyone has this great stories, but they don't know how to tell them. So I
Okay.
do workshops. I've done workshops. I just did a workshop this week for the city of Detroit, mothers and fathers with young children and birth experiences and doulas, fathers, young fathers with young children, so that they can tell their stories to health professionals, women who may want to be doulas, to state legislators,
Mhm.
because oftentimes the health disparities come from implicit bias. You walk into the hospital, deliver a baby, they look at you and go, oh, she can tolerate pain.
Right.
Go sit in the chair. You come on, your grandmother dropped her baby in the cotton fields and kept picking the cotton. You're all right.
Real. It is real. Yeah.
Or you get a C-section and you didn't want one.
Yeah. So you feel like storytelling narrative can help those situations.
Oh
When I
yeah.
hear storytelling and narrative, I hear artistic expression in front of a group of people, but that's
It's an art, it's a craft, it's a science. I
yeah.
just did 2 storytelling workshops, and then the storytellers put their stories on camera for that exact purpose. So storytelling can be used for anything. And
Okay.
so I'm also working with University of Detroit Mercy with faculty who are going to tell trauma stories, traumas of leaving Iraq,
Wow.
being bombed, or an Indian man being afraid when he walked down the street and saw 3 white guys with a Confederate flag, or father dying and can't find his grave in the cemetery. So all of these, I just do a workshop and bring the stories out. And
Yeah.
then they tell them in front of different kinds of audiences. But yes, I've worked with LGBTQ youth so that they can go up to the state legislators and
Yeah.
tell their stories about the things that they need.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, there are only a certain stories get to pass through corporate media, and the rest of the stories we don't know. So
We don't
I
know.
think health professionals need to know,
Yeah.
that's something you need to pay attention to. If a woman tells you she doesn't want a C-section, if she tells you she doesn't want an epidural, don't just ignore her because C-section is, you get paid more for it and the bed goes to somebody else. A lot of times that's all it is. C-section costs more.
Insurance, they'll pay for it. Do you work one-on-one with people? Do you?
I do. I have worked with lawyers who
Okay.
have to, they have to do their opening argument and close.
Right.
I've worked with women who have, I guess, they inspire other women. They have sort of organizations. I've worked with politicians. They need to learn how to tell
Stories.
some stories. That's her.
Yeah.
So if you're a human being, I'll
You
work
can,
with you.
yes, you can work and get your story told for whatever you need it for,
Yeah,
advocacy or your work or whatever it is. That's amazing.
yeah. Because it's a communication tool. It's
Yes.
the most effective delivery system of information and ideas. So why not use the best
Yes.
communication tool, the most effective one?
Yeah. So I have two more questions because I appreciate you've been here with us for such a long time. And I love that.
So thank
Yeah, this has been great. And I love that I have just learned so much more about you and so much more about the story and the narrative and how vast and wide and important it is just for every aspect of life. And then to know that you are out there advocating for women. I love that rite of passage. I'm going to use that. And I'm going to tell a lot of people, listen, Satori told me about this rite of passage for women. We need to get on board with that.
Mm.
My last question is, how does this storytelling and narrative differ from, say, a TED Talk?
Well, I've done TED Talk
Oh, okay, because that can be a narrative, that story as well.
and I told a story.
Oh, okay.
My
Yes, I do
story,
remember. Yes, yes, yes.
the TED Talk was how to change a city, how to transform a city. And so I told the story of creating the secret society Twisted Storytellers and how the listener is the soulmate of the storyteller and that the listener their listening is revolutionary. It's a revolutionary act because there's not enough listening, which I noticed in this interview that you're very good at.
Wow, thank you.
Your listening draws out the trust or
Mm,
creates the space for the sharing.
wow, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't feel any judgment. And so at the highest level, listening really is love.
Mm,
How many people actually can say, I felt heard?
yes, yes. I know in especially in the business world with women, and even I don't want to be judgy, but from my experience, even being a Black woman, it's like, am I even in the room? I might as well just excuse myself. No, are we listening? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And then as a woman, you talked about how you went through that phase where you were just trying to be that woman that you were supposed to be in our homes. We speak up and it's just like husbands just kind of do what they do.
yeah.
You know? This has just been an amazing conversation. How can people get in touch with you after this podcast is over?
They can go to my website, satorishakoor.com,
Okay.
and they can fill out a there's a contact page, and you can get to my email, and we can communicate that way.
And I encourage everyone to be able to at least be able to tell your own story. I feel like if you even look back on yourself, if you're 50 and over, or if you're 30 or 20-year-olds, they have just a little bit of life, but look at who you've been, where you've been, what you've learned. And if you can tell your own story and own it, you just have so much more power. And there's nothing to hide. There's no dark corners. And so you go show up in every area. And so you could, yeah, I've been there and done that. I used to drink a lot, or I used to, whatever it was, that was you, and you learned something from it.
Yeah.
No more shame, no more hiding, no more fear, no more going through menopause alone, stumbling through it, trying to figure out why am I like trying to kill everybody with my words. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, and thank you so much.
Yes.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to the F50Woman Podcast. Join the F50Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.